Commander Lisek watched her fleet burn. Through the viewport of her damaged ship, she could see the broken remains of 30 warships drifting in the cold darkness of space. Fire and metal. That was all that remained of the Drellani 3rd Defense Force. The Kreth had come with overwhelming numbers, as they always did. 200 warships against 30. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Lisek's hands trembled as she gripped the controls. She was the only commander who had escaped. Her ship was damaged, leaking air, and running low on fuel. Behind her, 7 other ships followed, all that survived from a fleet that had protected this sector for 200 years. "Commander," her navigator said, his voice weak, "where do we go?" Lisek did not answer. She did not know. The Kreth controlled everything now. Every safe port was either destroyed or captured. The Drellani Collective, once spanning 1,000 star systems, had been reduced to a handful of desperate colonies. 300 years of war. 300 years of losing. She set a random course into uncharted space. Perhaps they could hide. Perhaps they could find somewhere the Kreth had not touched. It was a foolish hope, but it was the only hope she had left. For 6 days, they traveled through empty space. The stars here were strange, unnamed on any Drellani map. Lisek began to accept that she and her crew would die here, forgotten in some dark corner of the galaxy. Then the signal came. It was primitive. Radio waves, the kind her people had stopped using 10,000 years ago. But it carried something strange. Patterns, rhythms, voices. "What is that?" her navigator asked. Lisek listened. The sounds were alien, yet somehow familiar. There was sadness in some of the patterns, joy in others, anger, hope. Whoever made these sounds felt things deeply. "Find the source," she ordered. They followed the signal for one more day. When they arrived, Lisek could not believe what she saw. A planet. Blue and green, covered in water and forests, and around it, ships. Primitive ships made of metal and fire, not the smooth energy drives of proper civilizations. These beings had barely touched their own moon. "A pre-contact species," her navigator whispered. "They do not know we exist." Lisek studied the planet. She watched their broadcasts, learned their languages through her ship's translation systems. They called themselves humans. They lived on a world they named Earth. She observed them for 7 days. What she saw confused her. These humans were violent. They fought among themselves, constantly wars over land, resources, ideas. They were tribal, aggressive, territorial. By all measures of galactic civilization, they were dangerous primitives. But she saw something else too. When disaster struck their kind, they helped each other. When their children were threatened, they fought with a fury that shocked her. When their homes burned, they rebuilt. Again and again and again, they did not give up. They did not accept defeat. In 300 years of war, Lisek had never seen a species like this. Her communications officer approached her carefully. "Commander, what are you thinking?" Lisek turned to face her crew. They were tired, wounded, hopeless, just like the rest of her people. "The High Elder told us to seek allies," she said. "We have searched the known galaxy. Every species either fled or surrendered to the Kreth. We have no one left." "These creatures are primitives," her officer said. "They cannot help us," perhaps Lisek agreed. "But they do not know the Kreth. They do not know that the Kreth are supposed to be invincible. They have no fear because they have no knowledge." She made her decision. It was against every protocol, every law of her people. Contacting a pre-space flight civilization was forbidden. It could damage their development, destroy their culture, but her culture was already dying. Her people were already being destroyed. Lisek sat at the communications array and began to record a message. She used simple concepts, basic images. She showed the Kreth. She showed the destruction. She showed her dying people. And then she added 3 words in the human language she had learned. "Please help us." She broadcast the message toward Earth. The signal reached the planet for hours later. It was detected by hundreds of listening stations around the world. At first, no one believed it. Alien life was a theory, a dream, a story for children, not reality. Dr. Hannah Cho was the first to decode the full message. She worked for the United Earth Space Agency, monitoring signals from deep space. When she saw the images of the ships, the destruction, the alien face begging for help, her hands went cold. She sent the message up the chain of command. Within 6 hours, it reached Admiral Tai-Ho Park. The admiral was 57 years old. He had served Earth his entire adult life, first as a soldier in the Unification Wars. Then, as an officer in the new United Earth Fleet, he had built the fleet from nothing. 47 warships designed to protect humanity from unknown threats. Now, the unknown had arrived. He watched the message 12 times. He saw the fear in the alien commander's eyes. He saw the burning ships, the dead bodies floating in space. He saw a species on the edge of extinction, reaching out to strangers for salvation. His advisors told him to be cautious. This could be a trap. These aliens could be lying. Humanity should protect itself, stay hidden, wait, and observe. Admiral Park listened to all of them. Then he made his decision. He stood before the United Earth Council 50 leaders representing every nation on the planet. The room was silent as he spoke. For 10,000 years, humanity has looked at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we have our answer. We are not alone. And the first voice to reach us from the darkness is a voice calling for help. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. We can hide. We can pretend we never heard this message. We can protect ourselves and watch as an entire civilization dies. His voice hardened. Or we can answer. The council debated for 3 days. Some wanted to wait. Some wanted to ignore the message entirely. Some wanted to prepare defenses in case the enemy came to Earth. But in the end, they voted. 31 in favor. 19 against. Humanity would answer the call. Admiral Park stood at the viewport of his flagship, the Dawn of Terra, watching his fleet prepare for departure. 47 warships. 200,000 soldiers, pilots, engineers, and crew. Every ship humanity had. Captain Yunishin stood beside him. Sir, do you think we are ready for this? Park did not answer immediately. He watched the stars, thinking of all the generations of humans who had looked up at those same lights and wondered what waited out there. They called for backup, he finally said. We are going to answer. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The fleet departed Earth on a cold morning in March as they passed the Moon, past Mars, past the outer planets. Billions of humans watched from below. No one knew if they would ever return, but they went anyway, because someone had asked for help, and humans always answered. The journey took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of traveling through empty space, following coordinates sent by an alien commander they had never met. 6 weeks of wondering if they were flying into a trap. Admiral Tai-Ho Park spent most of that time studying. Dr. Hannah Cho had established communication with Commander Lissik, and every day brought new information about the galaxy they were entering. The news was not good. The Kreth's dominion had conquered over 500 star systems. They had destroyed or enslaved dozens of species. Their military was vast, thousands of warships, millions of soldiers. They had never lost a war. They had never been defeated in any major battle. Why did the Drellani think we can help? Captain Yunishin asked during one briefing. We have 47 ships. The Kreth have thousands. Dr. Hannah looked up from her notes. Commander Lissik says the Drellani have tried everything. They have better technology than the Kreth in some areas. They have allies. They have fought with everything they have for 300 years. Nothing works. So what makes us different? Hannah hesitated. She says, she watched us for 7 days. She saw how we fight. She says we are not like other species. Yuna frowned. What does that mean? I do not know yet. The fleet reached the border of Drellani space on the 42nd day. Lissek was waiting for them with her 7 surviving ships. When the human fleet emerged from their jump, Lissek watched from her bridge. Her navigator made a small sound of surprise. I thought they were primitives, he said. Lissek understood his confusion. The human ships were not elegant. They were not beautiful like Drelani vessels, or terrifying like Kreth warships. They were blocky, angular, covered in weapons. They looked like they had been built for one purpose only: violence. "They are primitives," Lisek said quietly. "Primitives who have been fighting wars on their planet for their entire history. They know nothing else." She contacted the human flagship and arranged a meeting. Admiral Park came aboard her ship with Dr. Hannah and Captain Yuna. Lisek met them in her damaged conference room. Still scarred from the battle that had destroyed her fleet, Park was not what she expected. He was calm, quiet, studying everything with careful eyes. He did not boast or make promises. He simply listened as she explained the war.
Ow.
"The Kreth do not negotiate," she told him. "They do not accept surrender. When they conquer a world, they take everything of value and enslave the population. Those who resist are killed. Those who submit are worked to death." "How many species have they destroyed?" Park asked. "We do not know exactly. At least 30 that we have records of. Probably more. And no one has ever beaten them." Lisek lowered her eyes. "In 300 years, we have won exactly 4 major battles. We lost over 200. The Kreth learn from every defeat. They never make the same mistake twice." Park nodded slowly. He turned to Yuna. "Captain, what do you think?" Yuna studied the star maps Lisek had provided. "Their formations are standard. Overwhelming force, direct assault. They win because they always have more ships, more soldiers. They have never faced an enemy who fights differently." "Differently how?" Lisek asked. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Commander, in human military history, we have a long tradition of weaker forces defeating stronger ones. We call it asymmetric warfare. We do not fight the enemy where they are strong. We find where they are weak, and we attack there." Lisek did not understand. "The Kreth have no weaknesses." "Everyone has weaknesses," Park said. "We just have to find them." The fleet traveled deeper into Drelani space, heading for Station 7, one of the last major Drelani military bases. When they arrived, thousands of Drelani had gathered to see the humans. High Elder Voreth was waiting. He was ancient, over 4,000 years old, kept alive by Drelani medical technology. He had led his people through most of the war, watching them slowly lose everything. When he saw the human fleet, he felt something he had not felt in centuries: confusion. "Ah, these are your saviors?" he asked Lisek quietly. 47 ships. "Watch them," Lisek said. "Just watch." The humans did not act like any species Voreth had ever seen. They did not wait for permission. They did not follow protocols. Within hours of arriving, they were studying Drelani ships, asking questions, making suggestions. Lieutenant Minho Kong was the worst or the best, depending on perspective. He was a fighter pilot, young and aggressive, with a scar across his face from some past battle. He gathered the Drelani pilots and began teaching them human tactics. "You fly too carefully," he told them. "You are afraid to lose ships." "Of course we are afraid," one Drelani pilot said. "Every ship is precious. We cannot replace them." Minho shook his head. "In war, ships are tools. People are precious. Ships can be rebuilt. A pilot who is afraid to risk their ship is a pilot who will die careful and accomplish nothing." This philosophy shocked the Drelani. They had spent 3 centuries trying to preserve every resource, every ship, every soldier. The idea of deliberately accepting losses was foreign to them, but Minho showed them the results. In simulations, his aggressive tactics produced higher casualties, but also higher enemy casualties. Much higher. "The Kreth expects you to be defensive," he explained. "They expect you to protect and retreat. When you attack, when you take risks, they do not know how to respond." High Elder Voreth met with Admiral Park privately. The old alien studied the human carefully. "Why did you come?" Voreth asked. "Your world is far from here. The Kreth do not know you exist." "You could have hidden and been safe," Park considered the question. "Commander Lisek sent a message asking for help. We answered, but why? What do you gain?" Park was silent for a moment. On my world, there is an old saying: when someone drowns, you do not ask if they can pay you before you pull them from the water. You save them because they need saving. Vorith did not understand. In his experience, every species acted for its own benefit. Alliances were based on mutual advantage. No one sacrificed for strangers. "You're strange creatures," he said finally. Park smiled slightly. "We have been told that before." 3 days later, a Kreth scout fleet found them. The scouts escaped before the humans could stop them. The message went to the Kreth High Command: unknown. Alien ships had joined the Drellani. Warlord Gren received the report in his throne room. He was the supreme commander of the Kreth military, a veteran of 200 years of conquest. He had personally overseen the destruction of 11 species. "How many ships?" he asked. 47, Warlord. "Primitive design. Unknown weapons," Gren laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber. 47 ships. "Send 100. No, send 120. I want nothing left. Not one survivor. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who oppose us." He dismissed his officers and turned to stare at the star maps on his wall. 120 ships to destroy 47. It was more than enough. Far away. Admiral Park received word that the Kreth were coming. He gathered his officers and the Drellani commanders. He looked at each face in the room. "They are coming with 120 ships," he said. "They expect to destroy us icily. They are wrong." He turned to the star map and pointed at a small planet. Valen Prime. 2 billion Drellani civilians. That is where the Kreth are heading. That is where we will meet them. Captain Eunice straightened. "Sir, we are outnumbered 3-1. Park nodded. "Yes, we are. And we are going to win anyway." The fleet departed that night. 47 human ships and 12 surviving Drellani vessels, flying toward an enemy who had never known defeat. The Kreth arrived at Valen Prime expecting easy victory. 120 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. Commander Drask, leader of this fleet, had destroyed 17 worlds in his career. This would be his 18th. Then he saw the human fleet. Something felt wrong. The enemy ships were not hiding behind the planet. They were not forming defensive lines. They were spread across space in small groups, positioned at strange angles. "What formation is this?" Drask demanded. His tactical officers studied the sensors. "Unknown, Commander. It matches no standard pattern." "It does not matter. All ships, forward assault. Destroy them." The Kreth fleet moved as one massive force, a wall of ships designed to crush anything in its path. This strategy had worked for 300 years. It had never failed. Admiral Park watched them come. He stood on the bridge of the Dawn of Terra, perfectly calm. "They are doing exactly what we expected," he said. "All groups, execute Plan Alpha." The human fleet did something the Kreth had never seen before. Instead of meeting the attack, the small groups of ships scattered in different directions. They moved fast, faster than the Kreth had anticipated. Circling around the main fleet like wolves around a herd, Drask frowned. "They are retreating?" "No, Commander. They are surrounding us." Before Drask could respond, the first attack came. 4 human ships struck the rear of his fleet, firing everything they had at a single Kreth warship. The target exploded before it could even return fire. Then another group attacked from the left. Then another from below. Then another from above. The Kreth formation broke apart as ships turned to face threats from every direction. Their advantage in numbers meant nothing when they could not focus their fire captain. Unishin led her battleship Horizon directly into the center of the chaos. Her ship was fast and heavily armored, built to take punishment. "Draw their fire," she ordered her crew. "Make them chase us." 12 Kreth ships turned to pursue her. Una led them away from the main battle, twisting and dodging through space. Her ship took hit after hit, but she did not slow down. Behind her, Lieutenant Min Ho Kong saw his opportunity. His fighter squadron dove toward the pursuing Kreth ships from above. "Target their engines," he commanded. Nothing else. Just engines. Now, the fighters were small, almost invisible on Kreth's sensors. They struck fast and hard, their weapons tearing through engine housings. 6 Kreth ships lost power, drifting helplessly in space. YUNA brought the horizon around and finished them. On the surface of Valen Prime, panic had taken hold. 2 billion Drellani civilians watched the sky, seeing flashes of light that meant ships were dying. They had seen this before. They knew what came next, Kreth. Landing forces, enslavement, death. Then the human dropships arrived. Sergeant Sunwoo Beak led 500 human soldiers down to the planet's surface. They landed near the largest city, setting up defensive positions around civilian evacuation points. Sunwoo was 43 years old, a veteran of the worst fighting Earth had ever seen. He had survived 3 wars before humanity unified. Nothing scared him anymore. Set up the heavy weapons here and here, he ordered, pointing at key positions. When the Kreth land, they will come straight for the civilians. We are going to be in their way. The soldiers worked quickly. They had trained for years for battles like this, battles where they were outnumbered, outgunned, fighting for people who could not fight for themselves. The first Kreth landing force arrived 2 hours later. 1,000 Kreth soldiers, heavily armed, expecting terrified civilians and maybe a few weak Drellani guards. Instead, they found Sunwoo's soldiers waiting. The Kreth commander ordered to charge. His soldiers were strong, fearless, experienced. They had crushed resistance on 100 worlds. They had never fought humans. Sunwoo's soldiers did not run. They did not hide. They stood their ground and fired into the charging Kreth with cold precision. When the Kreth got close, the humans met them hand to hand. The Kreth were stronger. The Kreth were bigger. But the humans were faster, meaner, and absolutely unwilling to give ground. For the first time in his life, the Kreth commander saw his soldiers hesitate. These small, soft-looking creatures were not dying like they were supposed to. They were fighting like cornered animals, all teeth and fury. The landing force was destroyed in 4 hours. Only 30 human soldiers died. 700 Kreth bodies littered the ground in space. The battle reached its peak. The Kreth had regrouped, using their numbers to push back against the human attacks. Ships on both sides were dying now. Admiral Park studied the tactical display. They had destroyed or disabled 63 Kreth ships, but 17 of his own were gone. The Kreth still had numerical advantage. Sir, his tactical officer said, they are focusing on the horizon. Captain Shin is taking heavy fire. Park opened a channel to Yuna. Captain, can you hold? Yuna's voice came back, strained but steady. We are not going anywhere, Admiral. Let them focus on us. Every gun pointed at us is a gun not pointed at Valen Prime. Park understood. Yuna was sacrificing her ship to protect the planet. It was exactly what he would have done. All ships, he broadcast, the horizon needs support. Groups 3 through 7 converge on her position. We protect our own. 24 human ships changed course, racing toward the surrounded horizon. The Kreth found themselves caught between the damaged battleship and a swarm of angry warships. Commander, Drask watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was falling apart. Ships were being picked off one by one, isolated and destroyed by these strange, aggressive aliens. This is impossible, he whispered. They are outnumbered. They should be dead. His second officer looked at him. Commander, we should retreat. Regroup and return with more ships. The word felt foreign. Kreth did not retreat. Kreth did not lose, but Drask looked at the numbers. Half his fleet was gone. The humans had lost barely a third of theirs. If he stayed, he would lose everything. All ships, he ordered, his voice hollow, fall back to hyperspace. We are leaving. The Kreth fleet fled. The survivors jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of 63 warships and thousands of dead soldiers. In space, the human fleet fell silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly cheering began. First on one ship, then another, then all of them. On the surface, Sunwoo watched the Kreth landing ships lift off and run. Dralani civilians emerged from their shelters, staring at the human soldiers who had saved them. One young Dralani child approached Sunwoo carefully. She looked up at him with huge, frightened eyes. Are you staying?" she asked. Sunwoo knelt down to meet her eyes. "Yes," he said. "We are staying. No one is going to hurt you. Not anymore." The child began to cry. She wrapped her arms around Sunwoo and held on like he was the only solid thing in the universe around the planet. Similar scenes played out. Humans and Dralani, two species who had never met before. Embracing in the aftermath of survival, Admiral Park received the final casualty report. 11 ships destroyed, 2,400 humans dead. But Valen Prime was safe. 2 billion civilians would live. Far away in the Kreth throne room, Warlord Gren received Commander Drask's report. He read it 3 times, unable to believe the words. Defeat. The Kreth had been defeated. He looked at the images of the human ships. These ugly, primitive vessels that had done the impossible. What are these creatures? He asked the empty room. No one answered. But Gren knew one thing with perfect certainty. This was not over. It was only beginning. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The Kreth had been defeated. Not in a small skirmish, not in a minor border conflict, but in a real battle. They had sent 120 warships and lost more than half of them. They had fled. For 300 years, the galaxy had believed the Kreth were invincible. That belief died at Valen Prime. Within days, everything changed. Species that had surrendered to the Kreth began to rebel. Enslaved populations rose up against their masters. Old allies of the Dralani who had abandoned the war returned with whatever ships they could gather. They all wanted the same thing. To meet the humans, Admiral Taiho Park found himself overwhelmed. His fleet had come to help one dying civilization. Now, dozens of species were asking for his leadership. "This is not what we planned," Captain Yuna said during one of many strategy meetings. "We came to fight a war, not build an empire." "We are not building an empire," Park replied. "We are building an alliance," established a war council, bringing together representatives from every species willing to fight the Kreth. The meetings were difficult. These races had different cultures, different languages, different ways of thinking. Some had been enemies in the past. Some did not trust each other, but they all trusted the humans. They had seen what humans could do. Dr. Hannah Cho became essential to these efforts. She learned languages faster than anyone thought possible, finding ways to communicate ideas across vast cultural divides. She discovered that humans had something rare in the galaxy, the ability to adapt. "Most species specialize," she explained to Park one evening. "The Dralani are defensive. The Kreths are offensive. The Vallani are traders. The Morith are scientists. Everyone has one thing they do well, and humans." Hannah smiled. "We do everything. Not perfectly, but well enough. We change ourselves to fit the situation. The galaxy has never seen anything like it." This adaptability showed in how the human soldiers trained with their new allies. Lieutenant Minho Kong worked with pilots from 6 different species, teaching them aggressive tactics. Sergeant Sunwoo Beek trained ground forces, showing them how to fight dirty, how to use terrain, how to never give up. The Dralani pilots who had once been afraid to risk their ships now flew like maniacs, attacking with a fury they had never shown before. The ground soldiers who had always retreated when outnumbered now held their positions and made the enemy pay for every inch. "They are learning to fight like us," Minho said with pride. "They are learning to fight to win." Not everyone welcomed the humans. Ambassador Talvi represented the hegemony, a confederation of wealthy species that had stayed neutral in the war. They traded with both sides, profited from the conflict, and had no intention of joining it. Talvi requested a private meeting with Admiral Park. She was elegant, careful with her words, clearly experienced in diplomacy. "I must understand something," she said. "Why did you come here? The Dralani have nothing to offer you. They are weak, broken, nearly defeated. What do you gain from helping them?" Park considered her question. He had been asked this many times now, and he still was not sure how to explain it. On my world, he said, we have a saying. When someone calls for help, you answer. It is what good people do. Talvi studied him. You expect me to believe you crossed the galaxy, risked your entire species just because someone asked? Yes, that is irrational. Park shrugged. Perhaps, but it is who we are. Talvi left the meeting confused. In her experience, every action had a calculated benefit. Every alliance was based on mutual advantage. The idea that someone would fight and die simply because they were asked was alien to her. Truly alien in a way nothing else had ever been. She returned to the hegemony with her report. The council read it and dismissed it as propaganda. No species acted without self-interest. The humans must have a hidden agenda. Meanwhile, the coalition grew stronger. 200 ships now flew under joint command, with more arriving every week. Factories that had been shut down began producing weapons again. Scientists from a dozen species worked together on new technologies, for the first time in centuries. The galaxy had hope. Warlord Gren watched these developments with cold fury. His defeat at Valen Prime had embarrassed him before the entire Kreth Dominion. Some whispered that he was losing his touch, that perhaps it was time for new leadership. Gren silenced those whispers by executing anyone who spoke them. But he knew he could not afford another defeat. The humans had done something no other species had managed. They had shown that the Kreth could lose. He gathered his advisors and demanded answers. Who were these creatures? Where did they come from? What was their weakness? The answers were unsatisfying. The humans came from a small planet on the edge of the galaxy. They had no galactic allies before this war. They had primitive technology compared to older civilizations, yet they had one. They fight differently, one advisor said. They take risks that no rational species would take. They sacrifice themselves for objectives that seem meaningless. They do not behave logically, Gren understood. Logic was the Kreth way. They calculated advantages, chose battles they could win, and crushed weaker enemies. They had no experience fighting someone who ignored the mathematics of war. And we will not fight them here, Gren decided. We will not battle them in Drelani space, where they can play their games. We will strike at the source. He pointed at the star map, at a small blue planet far from the front lines. We will attack Earth. We will destroy their home, their families, everything they love, and we will see how they fight when there is nothing left to fight for. His advisors were shocked. Earth was far from Kreth territory. It would require their entire fleet to reach it, leaving their own worlds unprotected. Warlord, that is extremely risky. The humans risked everything to come here, Gren interrupted. We will do the same. But unlike them, we will not fail. He began assembling the largest fleet in Kreth history. 800 warships. Every available vessel. The total military might of an empire that had conquered 500 worlds. He would destroy Earth. And then he would return and crush the coalition. The humans had made him look weak. He would make them extinct. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Hannah received a disturbing report from a Drelani spy network. She brought it to Admiral Park immediately. They're coming for Earth, she said. 800 ships. Everything they have. Park was silent for a long moment. He looked at the star map, at the vast distance between the coalition fleet and humanity's home. If we leave now, Una said quietly, we can reach Earth before them, but we would be abandoning everyone here. And if we stay, Minho added Earthfalls. Park closed his eyes. He had brought his fleet across the galaxy to save the Drelani. Now, his own people faced destruction. He thought about his family back on Earth, his sister, his nieces and nephews. He thought about the billions of humans who had watched the fleet depart. Trusting that their soldiers would protect them, he thought about the Drelani child who had hugged Sergeant Sunwoo and asked if the humans would stay. We are not going to abandon anyone, he said finally. Not the Drelani, not Earth. We are going to do both. The others stared at him. Sir Una said carefully, that is impossible. Park smiled, but there was steel in his eyes. Impossible is what humans do best. He began to explain his plan. As the others listened, their expressions changed from confusion to understanding to something like awe. It was crazy. It was reckless. It might kill them all. It was perfectly human. Admiral Park's plan was simple in concept and terrifying in execution. The coalition fleet would split. 200 ships, mostly Drellani, would race back to Earth to defend humanity's home. The remaining 300, led by humans, would do the unthinkable. They would attack the Kreth homeworld. Their entire fleet is heading for Earth, Park explained to the War Council. That means their home is nearly undefended. If we strike there, we force them to make a choice. Continue to Earth and lose everything they have, or turn back and face us. High Elder Voreth listened with growing amazement. You want to threaten their civilian population? Their families? I want to make them feel what you have felt for 300 years, Park replied. I want them to know fear, Council agreed. There was no other option. Captain Unishin would lead the defense of Earth. Lieutenant Minho Kang would command the fighter squadrons in the attack on the Kreth homeworld. Sergeant Sunwoo Beek would coordinate ground defenses on both fronts. As the fleet prepared to split, Yuna found Park standing alone, looking at the stars. You should be with the attack force, she said. That is where the glory is. Park shook his head. Earth is my home. My people are there. I will not abandon them. We might not win. I know, he turned to face her. But we will not lose either. Not completely. Whatever happens, we will make them remember this day, Yuna saluted. It has been an honor, Admiral. The honor is mine, Captain. Protect our home. The fleet separated. 200 ships jumped toward Earth. 300 jumped toward the Kreth homeworld. The fate of two civilizations raced across the galaxy. The Kreth arrived at Earth first. 800 warships emerged from hyperspace, filling the sky with their presence. On the surface, humans looked up and saw death approaching, but they also saw their defenders. 200 ships formed a line between the Kreth and Earth, refusing to move. Warlord Gren laughed when he saw the defense force. 4-to-1 odds. This will be quick, he ordered the attack. The Battle of Earth was brutal from the first moment. The Drellani fought harder than they had ever fought before, using every trick the humans had taught them. They attacked in small groups, disrupted formations, sacrificed ships to protect others. But 4-to-1 was too much. Admiral Park commanded the defense from Earth's surface. Watching the battle unfold on tactical displays, ship after ship disappeared his ships, crewed by his friends, dying to buy time. Sir, his communications officer said, they are breaking through. Park saw it. A group of 50 Kreth ships had punched through the defensive line. They were heading for the surface. Ground defenses, prepare to engage. Around the world, human soldiers took their positions. They had never faced enemies from space before, but they would not run. This was their home. Gren's flagship descended through Earth's atmosphere, leading the attack. He wanted to be first to set foot on the human world, first to claim victory. Then his communications officer interrupted him. Warlord, urgent message from home. Gren felt something cold in his chest. What message? Enemy fleet has entered our system. They are attacking the homeworld. For a moment, Gren could not speak. His home, his family, everything the Kreth had built over 1,000 years, under attack? Impossible. Their fleet is here. Warlord, we are receiving distress calls. They have over 300 ships. Our home defense fleet is overwhelmed. On the Kreth homeworld, Captain Minho Kang led his fighters in devastating attack runs. The human fleet had arrived without warning, peering out of hyperspace right on top of the planet. Kreth civilians watched the sky in terror. For the first time in their history, they saw enemy ships above their cities. They finally understood what they had done to so many others. Minho's orders were clear. Do not destroy civilian targets. Do not become what the Kreth were, but make them afraid. Make them know that they were not safe. All ships, Minho broadcast, maintain pressure. Let nothing escape. Back at Earth, Warlord Gren faced an impossible choice. Continue the attack and lose his homeworld. Retreat and admit defeat. His second officer approached carefully. "Warlord, what are your orders?" Gren stared at the blue planet below. He had come here to destroy humanity, to prove that the Kreth were still supreme, but the humans had outmaneuvered him. While he attacked their home, they attacked his. Neither side could win completely. Neither side could afford to lose. His communicator activated. A human voice spoke. "Admiral Park." "Warlord Gren, I will speak plainly. You can stay here and destroy Earth, but while you do, my fleet will destroy your homeworld. Everything you have, everyone you love, gone." Gren said nothing. "Or you can leave. Now, go home and protect your people. Let mine live, and yours will live too." "This is a trick," Gren growled. "No trick. Just a choice. You taught the galaxy to fear you through destruction. I am teaching you what it feels like to face that destruction. We are Kreth. We do not surrender. I am not asking you to surrender. I am asking you to choose your pride or your people, your revenge or your children." Gren closed the channel. He stood in silence for a long moment, feeling the eyes of his officers on him. 300 years of conquest. Hundreds of species destroyed. And now, this small, primitive species had brought him to his knees. "All ships," he said finally, the words like ash in his mouth, "returned to hyperspace. We are going home." The Kreth fleet withdrew. 800 warships turned and fled, racing back across the galaxy to protect their world. On Earth's surface, humans watched them go. At first there was silence. Then, slowly, cheering began. Crying, laughter, relief. Admiral Park sat down heavily, suddenly exhausted. They had survived. At the Kreth homeworld, Minho received word that the enemy fleet was returning. He ordered the human ships to withdraw, but not before broadcasting a final message to the planet below. "This is Captain Minho Kong of the United Earth Fleet. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Remember that. Remember that mercy is something you never showed others. Maybe it is time to learn." The human fleet jumped away, leaving the Kreth homeworld intact, but changed forever. 6 months later, a peace conference was held on neutral ground. The Kreth Empire was fracturing, its aura of invincibility shattered. Slave species were breaking free. Conquered worlds were declaring independence. Gren did not attend. He had been overthrown by his own people, blamed for the disaster at Earth. The new Kreth leadership wanted peace, or at least a pause to rebuild. High Elder Vorith sat across from Admiral Park at the negotiating table. Around them, representatives from dozens of species watched in silence. "We called for backup," Vorith said quietly. "We expected soldiers. Perhaps a few hundred fighters willing to die for money or glory." Park said nothing. "Instead, you sent everything. Your entire fleet. Your best soldiers. And then you split your forces to save both your world and ours, against all logic, against all reason. It seemed like the right thing to do." Orth made a sound that might have been laughter. "The right thing?" Such a human concept. He extended his hand, a gesture he had learned from the humans. Park took it. "On behalf of the Drellani Collective, I thank you. We will never forget what you did. We will teach our children about the humans who came from the stars, not to conquer, but to save." The news spread across the galaxy. The war was over not with a final battle, but with a choice. The humans had proven that they could destroy, but they had chosen not to. Ambassador Talvi finally understood. She had asked Park why humans had come, what they gained. Now she knew the answer. They gained nothing. They came because someone asked for help. They fought because it was right. They showed mercy because that was who they were. She returned to the hegemony and gave her final report. "The humans are not conquerors," she said. "They are something we have never seen before. They are protectors. And the galaxy will never be the same." Years later, monuments stood on 100 world statues of human soldiers, human ships, human faces. The species that had been enslaved told stories to their children about the day the sky opened in strange, fearless creatures came to save them. On Earth, Admiral Park retired to a small house by the ocean. He spent his days watching the waves, thinking about the friends he had lost and the lives he had saved. Sometimes visitors came. Dralani, Villani, even a few reformed Kreth. They traveled across the galaxy just to shake his hand, to say thank you. One evening, a young Dralani woman arrived at his door. She looked familiar somehow. Admiral Park. My name's Lysick. I was a child on Valen Prime when your soldiers came, Park remembered. The girl who had hugged Sergeant Sunwoo. I came to tell you something, she said. I am joining the new Galactic Defense Force. I am going to protect people, just like you protected us. Park smiled. That makes me very happy. I also came to give you this. She handed him a small device. A recording? He played it later, alone on his porch. It was a message from across the galaxy. Voices from 100 species, speaking in 100 languages. But they all said the same thing. Thank you. In the darkness of space, new ships patrolled the borders. Dralani ships, human ships, ships from species that had once been enemies. They flew together now, protecting a galaxy that had learned a simple truth. When someone calls for help, you answer. That was what it meant to be human. And now, the galaxy understood.